Dear Pro Wrestling, this is the world's most dangerous podcast, and as the world's most dangerous game, I have to put you on game like only I can. But I did not come alone because I am also here with the Chaos Premier himself, Kevin Kalloway. Now, there's going to be some things that we've said.
That is me. I'm here. We're ready to hear and talk about more things to help you and better.
Now, there will be some things we say on this podcast that y'all will not like. And quite frankly, we don't give a damn. It just means this podcast ain't for you. This is for the people that want to grow, know, and get through this thing called pro wrestling. This is for the people who understand that we're not your financial advisors, we're not your life coaches or gurus. No, we are just people in this business that want to see you in this business grow and do better. And if that's you, if you fit that bill, then lock up and lock in and let's be like Darkwing Duck and let's get dangerous. This is Dear Pro Wrestling. Mr. Kalloway, how are you doing today?
I'm tired. Coming off of a long show weekend, but I am here. I'm ready to help those listeners better themselves, better everything that they would like to do within the pro wrestling business as best we can. And while we might not be the absolute end all be all of all knowledge, and we'll be the first to tell you that we aren't, we just want to give you some things to think about and give you some good advice that has gotten us through based on the stories we've heard. And man, I'm ready. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And I'm not going to hold you. I am also exhausted just like you. We actually were at the same place but had a bit of a difference when it came to our travel. But
yeah,
I'm excited. I'm ready to get into it.
Mm-hmm. And what are we getting into there, Paragon? We had a conversation about this actually pretty much live at the show that we were at, and we said, you know what, this is something we should put onto a podcast.
That's very true. I mean, we literally were like, we got to talk about this. This is something that needs addressed, and it's sad that I feel like it needs to be addressed, but I mean, here we are. Because a big part of what we do is we address the stuff that they don't talk to you about in pro wrestling school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time that we address the fact that a lot of people don't understand their place on a card.
They don't. And it's not... I do want to preface by saying this. Understanding your place on the card isn't trying to look you in the face and go, oh, you'll never be a main eventer. That's not what this is about. That's not what we mean. It means at this time, this is where the place is. You'll see a lot of veteran wrestlers be in different places of different importance on a card, but they all have a job to be doing. And we really wanted to go through just really the entirety of the card and the different kinds of matches. What ones are potentially more important, what ones are less important. And less important doesn't mean you'll always be less important. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there real quick before we dive into all of this.
Yeah, because really what is being addressed is every single match has its place and its importance on a card. And sometimes people feel like where they're at on the card deems their value. No, your value is all over that card. But it's a matter of the value you bring to that match that determines your actual value on the card. Now, we're going to talk about this in one of our episodes, how there is the ideal card number of matches, and there is the not so ideal number of card matches. We're going to go off of what we call the perfect structure. And to us, the perfect structure is a 7-match card, including a pre-show. So pre-show, 3 matches, intermission, and then 3 matches. But you know what? Let's get into it. And I think we should start off with pre-show.
Start right at the top. And I always say this, and I preach this to people. Just because you call this a pre-show match doesn't mean it isn't the first match on the card, because it's the first thing that people are going to see. So I see this happen, and this is more of a card booking thing. But I think it sets up people sometimes is they'll call it a pre-show match, and then they'll just put 2 people who just graduated wrestling school into a match where they needed a veteran to lead one of them or someone.
Yes.
Oh my, it's a huge pet peeve of mine because that's the first action everyone's seeing on that card, no matter what. Like you can call it whatever match you want, but it's the first match on the card.
And you know what really like just irritates my soul when they do that? Like, oh, let's just put the green kids in this match that need probably a veteran in there guiding them. The purpose of the pre-show match is pretty much, in my opinion, can you connect with the crowd and get yourself over and make us care about you enough to want to bring you back?
Mm-hmm.
So to put you in there with someone else who also may be inexperienced and you may need that veteran guidance, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
And like I once had somebody ask me like, "Oh, well, what if you just have somebody agent your match?" That's cool and all, but what happens when the match is not going the way you want it to go, or there's a mistake, or the crowd is chanting the other direction? One to use the baby face, one to use the heel, but they decide to switch you guys. That veteran is going to be the one, especially if they know how to work, that's going to get the match back on track and it's going to direct you to where you're supposed to go. And a lot of times, being green in the business, unless you know you might have really elite training, House of Truth, you don't
Shout out
you
Truth
don't
Martini.
always have the yeah. Shout out Truth Martini. A lot of times, people don't have the skill set to deal with the audible being called.
Yeah, and as a person who has been tasked to agent a lot of kids' matches where both of them are less than a year in the business. And I say kid not to say that their age calls them a kid, but that they're more green in the business. It doesn't matter how good of a match I structure in the back at all, because once they get out there, it could all just go up in flames.
Most definitely,
And putting
most
that on your
definitely.
pre-show for your first match is any promoters listening, uh, or even some of the people who are green and getting put in these situations. First of all, it ain't your fault.
Or even the people who might want to own a company one day.
Yeah, it ain't your fault. Those green kids, it's not your fault. You're getting put in a position that you shouldn't be, in my opinion. Uh, and just make sure that you're really leading a good foot, because, and we'll get into it, but there's places on the card to try and put more people in with less experience.
And also, like, if you break down a wrestling show like a musical performance, the pre-show match is the DJ.
Mm-hmm.
You are the DJ that gets the crowd hype before the opening act.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you have an important job within itself because while people are coming in, you have to pull their interest. You have to make them care. You have to give them some type of show that makes them excited. Hell, if this is a movie, you are the previews.
Mm-hmm.
And trust and believe, there are many people who come to the movie for previews. Like, I used to think that was weird when I was younger, and then I got older and I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what's coming out. So, in a way, you are not only setting the tone, but you are also pulling people in. You are telling people, get ready for what's to come. And I feel like when we're talking about like their purpose and place on the card, a lot of times people also use the pre-show match as let's see if we want you on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel it does you justice to understand that this is a match where you want to show people that you can work and then do your one cool move.
Yep.
This isn't the let me do all the cool stuff because one, why are you trying to kill a crowd that hasn't been warmed up yet?
Mm-hmm.
Also, if the entire crowd's not in the building, then why are you potentially doing some dangerous and high risk moves for a crowd of people that aren't even there yet? And then top it off, there's a whole rest of the show that people have to worry about. And you may be taken away from other points and parts of the show because I always say the crowd is energy and they only have so much energy to give. It cannot be replenished at a single show. And so every time a crowd goes up and they pop and they get excited and they cheer, you're taking that away from another part of the show.
Yeah, because you're taking all that energy that they would be using somewhere else and utilizing it very early. You're front ending the entirety of the card. And man, just You go out there in a pre-show match, and what pre-show really kind of means is you want to get the crowd going, hyped up, just like that DJ set. You are the DJ playing, you know, Black Parade before the opening band of Fall Out Boy comes out.
You are the DJ playing "They Not Like Us,"
It,
before shoot Tyler the Creator hits the stage.
yeah, perfect. Uh, you just want to get people going and keep the energy vibing. And man, it doesn't need to be this big complex match on a pre-show. I don't think that's the right place for it. What you need is just that get that character over. Get the crowd understanding, "Oh, okay, we're going to be doing, this is the heel, this is the baby face," and going from there to really understand exactly who is in what place. And really getting behind those characters so that you can start graduating, up a card. Honestly, I don't hate pre-show matches myself. Book me in a pre-show match. It doesn't feel like a tryout to me. It's hey, they're sending me out to get everyone going.
And also, sometimes, depending on what company you're working for, the pre-show match is very important because, like Emerge Wrestling, which is where we were at last night,
Hmm.
Emerge Wrestling, they have what they call the Facebook Live match.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, you're like, oh, it's the pre-show. I'm like, yeah, this is the match that's being seen on Twitter. It's being seen on Facebook. It's being seen on YouTube. Like, everybody is getting to see this match. You're live, pal.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a very important match. And a lot of times people look at it as like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. We've had title changes happen on the Facebook Live match.
Yep.
We have had people's careers put on the line during a Facebook Live match. So, like, pre-show match doesn't have to be deemed unimportant. It's a lot of times what you make of it.
You know what? And I like, there's some companies that do this, and, some of the times they do it right, and some of them it's kind of meh. Uh, but they won't do what they call pre-show matches. They'll do what they call VIP matches. And a VIP match means that someone had to pay a VIP ticket to get these extra matches. They had to pay extra price to get in early to see these matches. And when they put those VIP matches up, I think the wrong way to do it is to have just, we're going to treat it like a pre-show, but we're going to sell VIP tickets. And by treat it like a pre-show, I mean they're going to put green kids in there, and those we're just going to get extra matches to see the stars of tomorrow. Don't do that. Um, but I see a couple companies run VIP matches, and they got like stars on those VIP matches. Now we're making money. Now we're doing business. Now those pre-show quote unquote matches, those have importance.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But I do want to talk about what is considered quote unquote the the opening match in the very first match.
Yeah.
And one reason why I want to talk about it is because as I have progressed in the business, I didn't realize how many people have such a negative perspective on opening matches. And I mean in two different ways. Because they're the people who don't take match one seriously because they look at it as I get to go home early. And then they're the people who feel like to be in the opening match is either a demotion or they're not good enough. And I'm like, who trained you?
Yeah.
Who trained you?
Who told you that was the truth?
Because I know it wasn't truth. Truth didn't tell you that.
Nah, Drew didn't tell you that. He gave you a whole book on why that isn't true.
But yeah, and I say this because, and I'm gonna start with the latter, not the former.
Hmm.
Um, I've been on shows where people were like, "Oh, I'm opening again. Oh, I'm the curtain jerker again. Like, I wish I was more important." Do you realize you have one of, if not the most important job on the entire show?
Hmm.
And I bring this up because now, depending on when you're hearing this versus when we're recording this, Bad Blood was last night.
Hmm.
You guys realize the opening match was a Hell in a Cell?
Not only was it a Hell in a Cell match, it was I would argue, the largest feud that WWE had to pay off on the entirety of the night. There was no continuation to it. This was the end.
And on top of that, it was a blood feud between two men that made you ask yourself, do they legitimately hate each other?
Hmm.
If you see one of the videos last night, it looked like CM Punk tried to kill Drew McIntyre with that table leg
Yep.
because there definitely was something sticking out of that table leg.
Yeah.
And he definitely tried to almost stab him in the eye with it and just barely missed. Like, so a lot of times this whole mindset of like the opening match is unimportant, which means you're unimportant. There are only unimportant matches to unimportant people.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the opening match to me is that it's that tone setting match. You know, whatever you want the rest of the card to be, and generally speaking, the rest of the card will be different, hopefully. But it's the tone setting match where you're either throwing someone out there that you know is going to go out there and have good matches, so that they can get everyone ready for the rest of the show and to get everything set, or it's like something that you're really trying to pay off early, and like we're going to do this early so that we can get people going from there. Like the opening match is it's God, I think it's the second most important match if I'm being honest with myself.
I mean, honestly,
And
I
people
look
have
at the
different
opening.
opinions, of course, but I think the
Yeah.
opening match is the second most important match only to the main event.
Well, look at it like this, because we were taught this, from our training that a match itself was like Aristotle's, storytelling.
Hmm.
That's the whole card. The whole card is Aristotle's storytelling.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like you cannot tell any story without having the establishment,
Yeah.
without having the idea of what this story is going to be about, without starting it. And you not just setting the tone of what the rest of the card is, but it is really on your shoulders to get the crowd excited for the show, interested in the show, care about the show. Everything that the pre-show match couldn't, wouldn't, or shouldn't do is now on you. And that's also considering if there is a pre-show match, because some companies don't do that.
Mm-mm.
So there is no warm-up DJ. It's just straight opening act.
Yep.
You have such an important job. And I feel like we get so lost in what we deem to be importance. And I'm like, once again, I just start quoting, people with contracts. There have been title matches and title changings and opening matches of pay-per-views and of these shows. And it's like we have to get out of this mindset that I'm only important if I'm top of the card. Because guess what? Sometimes that top of the card guy is on other places of the card.
Hmm. I mean, you see that all the time in larger companies, smaller companies, however you want to look at it. They'll have they'll have those larger guys like Randy Orton has been in the second match when he's already had his, huge runs, but like he's still one of the biggest stars they have. That doesn't it didn't diminish any of his star power, buying power, anything. And it's wild to me that it's wild to me that people can't see that. That like people are in different spots all the time. But yeah, like this, and I think that kind of brings us to the next match that we would be talking about. Because the opening match, while that's going to be a hot, like tone-setting match to make sure that everyone's ready for the rest of the card, the next match is going to be, it's going to be where you slow it down a little bit. That second match slot.
Yeah, and in that second match, and like we said, we're basing this off of our perfect structure. The match between opening and before intermission, second match, or wherever this is, if you have more matches on your godforsaken
Hmm.
show. But that second match, this is the calm down match.
Hmm.
This is the give the audience a breath. If this is a roller coaster, this is the part where you allow them to breathe for a second. You already pulled them all the way up, in the pre-show. You gave them the drop in match one. Now this is kind of the winds and curves and some of the like, easy, we're just going forward for a little bit, or maybe we're going back up again, you know. And I feel like people don't understand that that's what match two is supposed to be sometimes because they are like, oh, I'm supposed to top this. Like wrestling matches and wrestling shows are not supposed to be a constant incline. They're supposed to ebb and flow.
Yeah, because if you just keep going up, and I've heard people talk about this with the card, and I guess I'll address it here because it's coming up naturally. Um, I've heard in some pre-show meetings, and this isn't everyone, and I don't agree with the statement personally. But two things come up in pre-show meetings, and it's we want you to go out there, and in every match, we want you to prove why you should be the main event. And I hate that statement because it reinforces the idea that everyone should do all of the things all of the time. And it's not true. Because it ends up taking away from the rest of your card and making everything seem a bit less important. Or, potentially, it can cause the main event to have to do a lot of dangerous things in order to top it, to top other things on the show. And then another one I heard recently was that a card should be all rise, as in like the opening match, and then it should just go up the whole time. I don't agree with that statement either, because when will the crowd get a break? At some point, it's not going to hit, and even though you had good shit, like, that it isn't going to hit anymore with the crowd because they're already done. They're
And
just
it
out.
goes back to killing that energy that we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm. So, just to get back onto the topic before I stray off, the second match is where you slow it down. This might be the match. This might be a match where you run the basic 7 steps. And you're just running really, like, you're running the character work. This might be where you put over the heel. Because in order to, drain and deflate the crowd, they need to be given something they dislike for the finish. And you kind of build it around that.
Yeah, and I feel like people don't understand the importance of match 2 sometimes, because match 2 being that character match where you get the character over, to me that is a match where I can see what you're truly made of.
Mm-hmm.
I can see, can you work? Can you deal with adversity, and can you understand your place on a card when it's most vital? Because there are people that used to call match 2 the dead spot. And it's because literally your job is to calm down the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And some people hate that spot. Some people thrive in that spot. Some people love that spot.
I love that spot, by the way. I love that spot.
But so many people don't. So many people hate that spot. And mind you, I get it. I mean, I much more would rather be the heel in that spot, because I feel like I can get so much character work over in that scenario. But being asked to do match 2 is not them saying you're not good enough to be on the other spot in the card.
Mm-mm.
When you're asked to be match 2, hey, I trust you to do your job.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. I trust you to bring the crowd down when needed and pick them up when needed. I trust you to get your character over and not kill my crowd. Because a lot of people are like, oh, so you're saying that I'm not good enough for wrestling. Like, no. There is a trust I have in you to be match 2. Because I think you're talented enough that you have control over the audience.
Yeah. That's the one where you, especially, this is especially where I would put my, my heel that knows how to work. Like, really knows how to work. Because at that point, you have a guy who can maestro that crowd. And if you have a guy that can maestro that crowd and make him go up and down at absolute, on an absolute whim, you got something. Because you're going to take them up, you're going to take them down, you're going to take them any way that you want them to go.
But now we go to another part, and you and I go back and forth on this. We go back and
We do.
forth on this because we've talked about how we feel this match may be one of the, if we said there's 3 important matches, not 4, but 3 important matches.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it might be this one or it might be the next one. This is the match right before intermission.
Yeah.
And the match right before intermission, you have an interesting job, because you're not supposed to be better than match 1. You're not. You're you're not supposed to be better than match one. Honestly, you're not supposed to be better than most matches on the card. You're supposed to be better literally than match two.
Yeah.
And the reason why you're supposed to be better than literally match two is because you're picking them back up and you're sending them into intermission happy, ready to buy merchandise, ready to buy concessions. So it's your job to get them excited enough. It's kind of rough because it's that spot where it's like, hey, we want you to do good but not great. Like the best way I could say it is match one is supposed to be an A. Match two is supposed to be like a C plus B minus.
Hmm.
You're only asking match three to be a B. Not even a B plus, only a B.
Yeah, and then this is also I've heard a lot of bookers, more veteran performers, and things like that. If you're looking at booking a card or doing something along those lines, this is where you put a nice babyface win over. Send him into intermission happy. And honestly, and this can be a cheat code with some names that you bring in too. This is where you might put your name if he's not in the main event.
Most definitely.
Because
Especially because they love this spot because now you got I got to wrestle, you got to see me wrestle. I sent you to intermission happy and
uh,
instead of going to the back, I'm going straight to my merch
boom,
table.
boom, follow me to the merch table, guys. And think about like I'll just use an example of a performer that I've literally seen do this. Godfather. Godfather was in. I don't even think it was a match. I think it was a segment before intermission, and that was the segment that sent them to intermission. He would go out there. He did all of his thing. He did the hoe train stuff, and then he just like hoe trained all the way to the fucking merch table, and like
And
that's
depending on
brilliant.
and depending on what type of name you either have the name that is going to stay at his merch table for the rest of the show and watch the rest of the show, and he'll give critiques, he'll sell more merch, maybe he'll be involved in the main event but come from his merch table, or you have the ones that are like, hey, I'm going to go home or to my hotel or whatever, but thanks for the match, thanks for allowing me to sell my merch, whatever may have you.
Hmm.
But they love that spot. Many
Regardless,
names love that spot.
you're earning those brownie points with that performer. Just putting him in that spot, regardless of what he wants to do with it, it offers him that freedom.
And as I said, match two is my favorite match when I'm a heel. Match three is my favorite match when I'm a babyface.
Bingo.
Because if I'm a babyface and I win, and
Hmm.
then I get to go to intermission afterwards and sell my merch, and I can, oh man, like I think the biggest merch table line I have ever had. I had a line of 52 people. Like, and the person who came with me counted. I had a line of 52 people, and it was crazy, and it was because I won a big match right before intermission. It's great. It's great. And mind you, when we do Dear Pro Wrestling, we're talking about wrestling as a whole. So some of the stuff we're saying in this is trying to help wrestlers understand their place on the card. Some of it is a suggestion for match structure for some of these other wrestling companies, so that way they can do their part in making shows easier and better and making people want to actually be a part of them more. Um, but now we have the match that Kevin believes is the next important.
Yeah, that's accurate. Um, I think this match is basically another opening match, and that is when you come back from intermission. And if you come back from intermission, you need to do something to bring the crowd back up. Because if you're not doing something to bring the crowd back up, then the rest of the card, which would be your last two matches, really, really suffers. And this match back from intermission, this needs to be another. It doesn't need to be an A match like the opening match. But I think you want this match to rival what you just did sending them to intermission. So at least a B, like minimum B if we're looking at report cards.
See, I would say B plus personally.
And
I
I
feel
say
like
that's why I say minimum B. I think it's
yeah,
B plus is really what you want out of this.
Like
because
I definitely feel like you really want, and personally, it's just my opinion.
sure.
You want this match to be as close to match one without being match one.
Yep, absolutely. And this is when you bring them back from intermission, I think you can take this a couple different ways. I think this is one of those like I think this is the match where it can be the most creative you want it to be based on the card that you have for the rest of the time. So let's say a babyface is going over in the main. Coming back from intermission, I would give him a nice match. Get him up. But I might put the heel over here. Because I know my babyface is winning in the main. And I can ebb and flow a little bit. And the match in between, which we'll get to in a second, the match in between can kind of dictate past that. Just because with the importance of this match, I think you want it. You want something placed here that's going to end up really bringing people back, but it doesn't need to be in an up way. It can be in a more like deflating, like huge booze way, if you really got something.
And I also I feel like when it comes to this match, it's like you're the curtain jerker again.
Mm-hmm.
And since you're reestablishing everything you just did, because I have seen shows where people leave during intermission, or people go out and smoke, or they go out and drink, or they do whatever. It's literally your job to bring people back in, because now you don't have that pre-show match, or like the shows that don't have pre-show matches. Now it is up to you to get everybody back invested, everybody caring again, everybody wanting you to be. It's so much that people don't understand, that people don't realize, and it's as if you know. So sometimes people will call the match before intermission first half main, and there's some people who believe that once you're on the second half of the show, every match is a main event. You just keep stacking on top of itself. So when you are in that first match after intermission, you have to give main event quality without being the main event.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise, where are we kind of going from here? And
Exactly. Where do we go from here?
yeah, well, speaking of which, where we go from here in a perfect 7 match card, we will be on our 6th match now, and that's going to be the match in between the match back from intermission and your main. And this can be a tough spot to walk the wire, I think,
Tough.
because you want to do things that are going to be potentially a little bit higher than the match prior to you, or at least maybe a moment. But you want to make sure that you don't overshadow or do the same kind of structure as the main event.
Yeah. Like this match, you want to be A minus to A. You want to either be slightly not as good as the opening match, or just as good as the opening match. And it's a really tough task, because it's literally saying, hey, we want you to be better than the last match, but don't supersede the match to come.
Exactly. And oh, that can be really, really tough because you need enough things to do within the match and the match structure in order to get everything in to give credence to your story. But you also have to walk that absolutely fine line of, is this too much? Am I killing the main event? Because if you kill that main event, man, what are we doing here?
But some people look at that spot as that exact spot to do. Once again, not understanding their place on the card. There are a lot of people who will go into that match 6 and they are trying to kill the crowd. I'm going to show you why I should be the main event, but you're not. And if you respect the company you're working for, if you respect the show and the card as a whole, you wouldn't have that mindset of trying to show why I'm supposed to be the main event. That should show through your investment in yourself, how you carry yourself, and the work you're putting in and knowing how to work, in the match as a collective. But far too often people get in their head, oh, I have to do this, oh, I have to do that. And it's like, bruh, like give what it's needed, not what you want.
Yeah, like it's not about, and this is really for the entirety of the card and entirety of wrestling. I get that this is an ego-driven business, but if you look at an entirety of the card, this isn't about you. It just isn't. It's about what's best for business for that company at the time. And if you can do best business for that company, guess what? You get to come back.
Yeah, a lot of people forget though, I think that mindset
Mm-hmm.
of, hey, I'm doing what's best for business. Not trying to, quote a certain company that used to use that term, but a lot of times we are so focused on ourselves that we forget that we are a piece of the machine, not the whole thing.
No, we are
And I feel
absolutely
like,
not the machine.
which is why I truly feel this match right here can be a tough one because sometimes you're not even trying to overdo the main event. And also sometimes the quality and caliber of talent you are, and the quality and caliber of talent the main event is. Like I've been on shows where, and this is not trying to put myself over, but I've been on shows where I might have been one of the best people in that show. And the main event was the booker or promoter who booked themselves into being champion and booked themselves into working with a name who was also probably much older and wasn't going to do some of the things the booker booked them for.
Mm-hmm.
And the booker is not going to use charisma and emotion or in ring, and but they think they're using these things. And so there is that fine line of like, okay, like, do I hold back and mute myself as the person that they booked? So that way we can still get this going and that going. This match is a very, very tough one.
It's
But
incredibly tough.
then there's the match that has to be an A plus. There's the match that you have to quarterback the whole thing.
This is the one where you need everything. And honestly, ironically, I feel we need to spend the least time talking about this match because most people have been dreaming of being in this match for most of the time. But this is your A plus match. This is making sure. I think my biggest piece of advice when you're going into this main event match, you got to know what happened on the rest of the card.
True, true. Like
Because
you,
if
you
you
have to
if
watch the show.
if you don't understand what happened on the rest of the card, or you don't get with everyone, or they don't get with you, or whatever the process is for that particular promotion, man, you might be giving them the exact same shit. And if you give them the same stuff, like I think you're going to run into huge problems trying to get over because they've already seen it.
And many times, many, many, many times, because I have been a main event, I've had to watch the entire show,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes sucks when you're trying to, get your own stuff together. Maybe you have life stuff going on. Maybe you're being put in a position as a locker room leader. You have to handle certain stuff, which we'll talk about, locker room politics and things like that a later time.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's stuff you have to handle, and yet you have to watch every single match to make sure that there is no repeats, that they're not doing stuff that you're doing. I have literally, I'm main event, and match two or match three did exactly what I was like. Well, we got to take that out. We got to do something different now. But that's the burden of that. Also, we talked about how so many people like kill to get to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
You got to understand what that spot means.
Yeah.
That spot means that you are trusted with this responsibility. You do have to show why you are the main event and why the matches before you aren't. You have to carry yourself with a certain decorum in and out the ring and in the back and in front of people. Like something that I do that some people don't agree with. If I'm the main event and I'm a babyface, you will not see me until the main event. It does not matter if I have merch out. I'll have someone sell my merch for me. You will not see me if I'm the main event because we are supposed to be stars. There is supposed to be a disconnect between us and the fans. So why am I potentially messing with the excitement and the reaction and the pop I may get from the audience because I'm already showing myself too early? We talked about earlier, the crowd only has so much energy. and the energy that they direct towards you is already set. There are things that can be done to deplete that energy, and you don't want to be the person to do that.
No, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't do that because
Especially
if
because somebody could have already shot you in the arm earlier in the night.
I'm saying, uh, and just like I totally agree with that philosophy personally, and making sure that you still have that mystique about you on that card, and that you carry yourself with the air of a star. Like the game has already began for you. I think you can get away with a little bit more stuff when it comes to more undercard matches. But when you're the main, if you kill your star power early, they don't necessarily need to see you as much now.
And I think a thing that people also don't realize when we're talking about like your star power and killing your star early, we aren't saying don't engage with the fans.
Yeah.
Engage with them in the way that you're supposed to, respectfully and considering, your persona and the show and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are the star you say you are, you're going to sell the exact same amount of merchandise if you are or aren't at your merch table.
Yep.
I do my autographs after the show. I don't do any autographs before.
Mm-hmm.
Because guess who also doesn't do autographs during the show? All the people you look up to, who you want to be like them and see and be on TV with them like one day.
Yep.
They're doing their autographs, maybe coming into the show if fans are there,
Mm-hmm.
but they're doing most of their autographs after the show. So why am I going to come out to the merch table in the middle of the show? And you might say, well, oh, that's because they don't have an intermission. Okay, cool. They kind of technically do because they take breaks between every single match. And the breaks between matches for the likes of a WWE and AEW are a lot longer than the breaks between matches for an indie show. So they have multiple intermissions, if we're being honest. You don't see wrestlers going out there. Now, you may see a wrestler come through the crowd, and stuff like Jey Uso does that, but that's because the match has now started that he showed up.
Right, and that's different. That's an interference spot usually, or a plant or something like
Yeah,
that.
or it's his entrance or whatever may have you. Like it's different. Like the Shield. The Shield were doing that, but it was their entrance.
I used to do that with when I was running more of the Purge gimmick when it was creepier as opposed to what we have as the iteration now, where we would come through the crowd, slink, we would crawl, we would just like there's an ambiance to it if you do it right.
Yeah, and the main event holds a special spot because there's trust involved, there is responsibility involved, and also if you're the main event, a lot of people are looking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have been on higher cards or better cards than you, if maybe they have more of a name than you. Like I was on a show recently where someone I look up to came to me for advice on if they should do something or whatever because they respected my position on the card.
Right.
That's a very that's a really tough, like in a good way, tough feeling right there. Of like, man, I'm doing something right,
Mm-hmm.
but it's because there's a responsibility you have, and if you carry yourself a certain way, people respect that responsibility you have.
Yeah, and making sure that they can come to you with other things, and I think this is another importance of being in the back for most of the show as the main. It's so that people can get with you about the stuff that they're going to do in their match.
And also, and I will say this because this also goes to locker room talk and whatnot, and locker rooms itself.
Mm-hmm.
I was at an Emerge show recently, and I had somebody walk up to me and tell me this is one of the most fun locker rooms they had been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me some of that had to do with how I was carrying myself as a locker room leader, carrying myself as the main event.
And that to me is high praise as a worker.
Yes, because they're like, you were having fun, but you also were giving great advice, and you were being there for people. You were helping people with matches. You were watching the show. You had critiques. You were honest with people, but you made sure you built them up with your honesty instead of tearing them down. These are the responsibilities of a main event, and some people don't have that in them.
No.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
It
isn't a bad thing.
Some people like, hey, I just want to focus on my match. Hey, that's okay, but maybe you shouldn't be the main event.
Yep. And that's okay too. By the way, it's okay to not be the main event ever in your career. It's okay.
Some people don't want to be the main event. Some people hate when they're the main event
Yeah.
because they're like, I want to go home.
Yeah, I want to go home. Or like they don't necessarily want to carry the weight of all of that. Like they'll carry the weight of everything else and they might be good performers. They might be some of the best workers. But they don't aspire for the main event, or they don't care to be there because they understand where they want their place to be and where their specialty is based on their skill set. And that's okay. It truly is okay.
But we say all this to pretty much wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Your place on the card is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important to understand your place on the card.
Absolutely.
That's going to tell you how you put your matches together, how you interact with the fans, how you interact with others, because your place on the card is a responsibility, but you have your role in each of those responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're carrying yourself as such, you will understand wrestling's going to make so much more sense. Like somebody right now is going to listen to what we're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to watch an indie show that they really respect and like, or they're going to watch, a TV wrestling company, and they're going to be like, wow, this makes so much sense now. They're going to watch a pay-per-view and be like, wow, this makes so much sense now.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're going to understand the responsibilities of those on the show and then understand their responsibility on the show. It's going to cause you to call your matches differently. It's going to cause you to put them together differently. It may even cause you to carry yourself differently. I mean, when I understood my place on cards and match structure, that determined sometimes what gear I was wearing that day.
Yeah, it could be that too.
It's all a matter of how your mind works and how your mind works in the business. But you know what, Kevin? I think we gave them a good talk. I also think we talked the ear off some. So why don't you send us off?
Well, being a part of our IYH in Your House podcast family, I feel it's my duty to shout out the other ones we have. Every Monday, you can catch me, myself, the Grundmeister, and the voice Josh Joseph on Window Lickers. We give you that preview for the Raw show. We do some wild speculation. I like wildly speculating and causing my own chaos. It's a lot of fun. You got on Tuesdays, whenever Senior Hypocrisy Jones decides to have a little smoke sesh, you tune in right there. He's I like his takes. It's a fun time. On Wednesdays, after that Raw preview show, after you watch Raw, you can hit the Raw deal with House and O'Neill. They come around. They give you everything that happened. They give you the results. Maybe they give you a little speculation into the next time. On Fridays, you can tune in for two separate shows. Fridays is a packed day because you got your ECW watch-alongs with House and Mr. The Voice Josh Joseph. And Josh Joseph has that nice foundation in understanding ECW and all their storylines and things like that, and he's kind of guiding House through all of those. And I think it's an entertaining watch because it's kind of like watching your friend really get into the stuff that you just wanted to show him so badly. I think it's fun. And you also have Grun's Room that night to preview SmackDown shows. Grun goes into detail about some of the stuff that's going on with SmackDown and really gives some nice, some hot takes sometimes. Finally, Sundays, everyone we can get together, house party, we talk anything we want to talk about. But it gets kind of everyone together in the network to give a place to bring everything up. Paragon, send us out fully.
Well, we first want to say thank you to everybody that actually took the time to listen to this. This is not us trying to tell you that you're doing something wrong. This is just us trying to put you on game like only we can. And we are hoping that when we say this with you guys, that you really pay attention and that you really consider what we're saying. But hey, fuck do we know?
We just wrestlers.
With that being said, if you like what we do, yeah, we're just wrestlers. But if you like what we do, share, react, listen, subscribe, and also make sure y'all get us that 5 stars because we're trying to get Grun to shave his head bald and get a head tattoo.
Oh my
and
God.
So the more subscribers and reviews we get, the better it goes. But with that being said, he is Kevin Kalloway. I'm Paragon. Sincerely, dear pro wrestling.